Coaches, welcome and thank you for being here at the 2021 Flag Football Coaches Meeting. Certainly without coaches, we don't have teams. And so your presence being here and you saying yes to on the dotted line that you will coach a team, we certainly appreciate that here at Kids Incorporated and welcome you into the fold, certainly if you're a brand new coach for sure. But take care of those kids, as I always say, have a lot of fun with them. Coach, let's make sure if you've got background checks, and we'll talk about yourself first, make sure that you've got your background check turned in so you'll be able to coach, which you've got assistant coaches, and most teams do. Make sure those assistant coaches have their background checks turned in when your practice begins and certainly before the games begin. Our season will begin on Saturday, September 11th, and conclude on Sunday, October 17th, weather permitting. We'll hopefully get all our games in that period of time. Schedules, coaches, those will be emailed to you on Friday morning, September 3rd at 9 o'clock. You can also come by and start picking up your t-shirts for your teams at that time also. Coaches, help us out on our fields. We're obviously being able to use AISD's middle school fields for our flag football games. And if we have to, we'll use some city fields that we have in the past, such as Memorial Park, Belmar, or John Stiff Park. We'll see what our numbers look like as far as teams, but I would say 99% of our games will be played on the fields with AISD. So regardless of what field, make sure that you and your team, your parents, pick up all your trash after your particular game is over on Saturdays and Sundays. We don't want the next teams to wade into a bunch of trash. Plus, AISD can let us know in a hurry if we're not picking up trash, then they can certainly not allow us to use those fields, and we certainly can't allow that to happen, can't afford that to happen. So let's take care of all our business on our sidelines. That's a good thing to teach your kids, obviously, and your team is a good team finishing is your game. When you finish your game, please do that to help us out, help the school district, and help the city out. Weather-wise, hopefully all our weather is good, but you never know. We always try to have a weather announcement on our website and in our social media outlets at least 2 hours before game time on Saturday. So we'll start at 10 o'clock on Saturday. Hopefully by 8 o'clock or before we'll know if we're playing or not. Sundays we start at 1:30, so no later than 11:30 we'll have an announcement. Now if it's a game time decision, maybe it's rained early on those turf fields and we're not going to cancel a game right then. Give it some time to dry because it doesn't take 15-30 minutes to dry that on those turf fields and be able to play later. Game times will stay on time. But if it is a game time decision, then our referees, officials will get together with both coaches and make a decision and do what's best for kids. We can always make up the game at another day if we need to. Talking about officials, you'll have 2 officials per game on each field. Most of those high school, college kids, as they worked with us in the spring, will be back in the fall to work with us. So do your best to work with those folks. They'll do the best they can to work with you. Coaches, let's talk about some rules right quick. Go over a few things that you'll need to know. You'll have your coaches packets out to you this coming Wednesday, so everything will be in there. But some things that I want to talk about briefly. Make sure the coach's equipment we've checked out to you, those flags, 14 flag belts and flags and the 2 footballs, get those returned the week after you complete your season. We would appreciate that. Those are expensive to try to find and locate, and you don't want to lose those before you get them back to us. Make sure all your players are on the roster. Make sure you've picked up your shirts for those kids. Make sure when they have their shirts that they are tucked in. You can't have any shirt tails hanging out due to having those flags out. We don't want to be grabbing t-shirts, so make sure all shirt tails are tucked in. Must wear the Kids Incorporated issued flag football belts with 2 regulation flags on the side. Those must hang down from the side. They can't be in front or falling off this side or the other, so make sure those are on. And I know you do before the games, and our officials and you try to do the best we can during the games. We'll try to do flag check every 2 or 3 plays or so just to make sure everybody's got their flag on and make sure they're on the hips hanging down from there. Tennis shoes, any kind of rubber football cleats are fine to wear on those turf fields. Let's make sure we don't wear any steel spikes or any street shoes or anything like that. Hats of any kind are not permitted by our players on the field. That's a safety hazard. If you run into somebody with the brim of that cap, would not be fun. Make sure you take care of that. And if your children or somebody has a hard or plaster cast, they will not be allowed to play until those have been removed. So take care of that in your coaches meeting, if you will, coaches. Let's go over a few rules here as far as the game goes itself. Must have a minimum of 7 players. We do play 7v7. Maximum number on a team is 14. Certainly a coach can take more than 14 if they would like to. Must play at least half the game. That's 12 plays a game minimum, or at least half the game. That'll be more plays for probably everybody on the team, unless you have a really big roster. And we can discuss that if you need to give me a call about the numbers on your roster. The game will consist of 14-minute quarters or 2 20-minute halves. I think most of the teams now are going just to 2 20-minute halves. It makes it easier to change in opposite ends 3 or 4 times during the game. We may just make it to where we have 2 20-minute halves, but if you can't decide, that's what we'll do. We give you the option, though, before the game starts. Halftime will be 5 minutes. Each team will be allowed 2 1-minute timeouts per half, and those timeouts do not carry over until the second half. Make sure you use them. Official may stop the clock at their discretion. Usually that's for an injury, etc., something like that. We don't want to have a kid hurt out there still running a play. So once the play's stopped, we'll make sure we get a timeout if we need to with an injury. 2-minute warning will be given before halftime, before the end of the game. The clock will not be stopped at this time. Game time is forfeit time. Coaches, make sure your kids are there ready to play early enough to get their prep in and warm-ups in, and then we'll start the games on time. Teams do not share the same sidelines. I know that's a kind of a common sense thought and statement there, though it's happened in the past where there's 2 sidelines. Whoever gets the one or the other first, that'll be your sideline. They're both equal. They don't have any winning on either side or any losing on either side. So just pick a sideline and stay on that. Scoring coaches, obviously 6 points for a touchdown. We'll place the ball at the 13-yard line. You'll have a diagram in your coach's packet for the extra point. This is what we did in the spring. When you look at our field, the middle school fields, the 10-yard lines on either end will be the goal lines, and then the 13-yard line will spot on each end for the extra point. Actual play will begin on the 30-yard line, and 1st and 10 goes from, or 1st and 10, 1st and 20 is basically first and next line of the game. We play from the 30 to the 50 to the 30 to the 10. So keep that in mind. That's how the game will be run. Your 1st and 20 or next line of the game is always that 30, 50, or the 10. 2 points will be awarded for a successful pass play. 1 point for a running play will be awarded. A safety is worth 2 points. On the extra point attempt, if a play or a pass is intercepted or we catch a loose ball in the air on a fumble, a player may return those before it hits the ground for 2 points for that team. Playing field is 40 by 80. That hasn't changed. The 30-second play clock begins once the official blows the ball into play. As I mentioned, the first down will be the next line to gain over 20 yards. A tackle is made by removing the flag from the offensive player or the defensive player if there's a turnover of some kind there. The defender may not leave their feet to make a tackle. You know, we have kids that run down the sideline, and I've got a defender reaching, and if they reach and just can't quite get the flag, or maybe they do grab the flag, that's certainly legal. That's a judgment call. I'm good with that. But if we're chasing a kid and we leave our feet, try to grab a flag, that'll be a penalty right there. Same for the offensive player, whoever the ball carrier is, or a receiver. You can't jump up in the air and then spin to avoid being or having your flag pulled. So make sure you can spin on the ground. You just can't jump up in the air. Okay. If a flag falls off, or both flags while you're running, and they should, and there are pop flags, they should stay in there. But if they do, you've got one flag and you're running with the ball, all the defender has to do is just touch you anywhere and you'll be down at that point of contact there. Also, on the defensive line coaches, on the defensive end coaches, make sure that when they've pulled a flag, teach your kids, the defenders, to hold up that flag so the referee can see it and get you a better spot. Sometimes the flag's pulled, there's a bunch of players around that. Becomes kind of a jumbled huddle there, or mess, and they may gain 2 or 3 more yards, but it's hard for that referee or those 2 officials to pick up where the flag was actually pulled. So make sure you teach them, and once they pull the flag, to stop and hold it up. That way it'll certainly help the referee out during the game. Charging or running into anybody is not allowed by offense or defense. In other words, I just can't run right at you and run over you. You can't run right at me trying to take a flag. Obviously, we'll try to grab to the side, pull your flags. We can't have any contact, and we try not to. Flag football is an incidental contact situation. Technically, there's no contact at all for flag football, but I know it happens a little bit in our older kids. With our younger kids, it shouldn't happen at all like that. There are no kickoffs. Instead, the ball will be placed at the 30-yard line of the receiving team to begin play. Following a safety, the ball will be spotted at midfield or the 50-yard line. Coaches, there are no punts allowed. When fourth down is announced, a team in possession will have the option to either play the down or turn the ball over. If the ball is turned over to the opposing team, they'll begin possession from their own 30-yard line. If the fourth down play is played and the first down is not reached, the opposing team will receive the ball where the play ended unless the offense is within the 30-yard line. In this case, the opposing team will take possession of the ball at their own 30-yard line. Just take a look at the rules and receive those and go over that with your team coach. The ball is dead, obviously, is when the ball carrier's flag is pulled, ball is fumbled or hits the ground, ball carrier's knee hits the ground, offensive player's flag is pulled, ball carrier steps out of bounds, or a touchdown is scored. Let's talk a little bit about our offensive and defensive alignment. Offensive and defensive alignment, they must include a minimum of 3 players on the line of scrimmage to begin play. Defensive 3 players must be at least 1 yard off the line of scrimmage. Your linebackers and defensive backs or DBs must be 3 yards off the line of scrimmage when the play begins. Defense cannot intentionally attempt to cause the offense to false start. This will be a judgment call by the referees. There may be 1 offensive player in motion at a time. Let's talk about some screen blocking. Sometimes that may be the most difficult call for our referees to make, that and blocking downfield. Let's talk about that. Screen or shield blocking is the only blocking allowed. Blocking below the waist is not permitted. Shield or screen blocking is defined as a blocker impeding the defender's line of play. In other words, you've got your coach, you've got your center, then you've got your offensive tackles, which are basically, you don't have guards unless you want to put guards. Let me go back real quick. We said a minimum of 3 players. You can certainly have more than 3 players on the offensive or defensive line, but you got to have a minimum. And let me get back to, on the offense, you've got your, maybe you don't have 2 guards, you have your center, you got your offensive tackles, and they kind of spread their arms out like this to get their distance of where they should be. Those are where the offensive tackles should be. We'd like for them to have their hands on their knees to begin play if they can. On the defensive side, if you choose to rush, your 2 rushers to begin the rush must be on the outside shoulder of those tackles I just talked about, and they can be in the ready position, ready to go. But once the ball's snapped, those 2 rushers can take off on the outside of those tackles ends. Offense, do this for me. Coaches, teach this if you will. Make sure that when the ball's snapped, they can turn around, they can just turn their body and maybe get spread with their feet and put their hands in front of them to protect themselves. But once that rusher gets by you, coaches let the tackles, you just got to let them go. You can't keep trying to go for them or anything like that. I went out and watched a lot of different games during our spring season, as I have during the last fall and through the years. But I noticed that as soon as the ball snapped, our offensive players want to get their hands up. But there's no need to do that. We're not playing tackle football quite yet. What they need to do is just put themselves down. They can go here. Sometimes if you go here, you have a tendency to get your elbows up, and that's kind of a safety issue. If you put them behind yourself, that kind of leaves you exposed in the front. If you'll just put them in and then just cover yourself in the front for safety reasons, let those guys, if they get by you, let them go. But do not touch them, do not try to push them, don't try to chase them down with your hands, because you can't use your hands to block with anything with flag football. Once the player or ball carrier has passed the line of scrimmage, let's say it's just a quarterback sneak, or let's say it's a handoff to the running back, then everybody can rush. Once a quarterback's outside the tackles, then everybody can rush. But as long as the play had to be, once a quarterback takes the snap from under center, or it's in the shotgun, however he or she does it, once they make a motion outside, you bet. But once that ball snaps, only the rushers can rush at the snap of the ball only. And they don't have to rush it unless they want to. Some people just drop back and play a 7-man zone, which is great. But if you rush, they have to rush those 2 players only at the snap of the ball. You may have 1 lateral pass behind the line of scrimmage for the offense coach. A direct handoff, toss, or pitch behind the scrimmage is certainly legal. Player who takes the handoff, toss, or pitch can throw the ball as long as they do not pass the line of scrimmage. Talked about spinning. Let's don't talk about that again. Only 2 players allowed to rush. We've talked about that. These 2 players begin their rush, as I said, outside the shoulder of the offensive tackles. Make sure once the quarterback decides to run, let's say he just keeps it on the keeper and outside, then once again everybody can rush. Let's talk about downfield. Once the ball carrier's downfield, or we've completed a pass downfield, or our quarterback's taking a run around the end and downfield, all the offensive players or receivers who are downfield, maybe they're trying to catch a pass, but he ends up running. You just have to stop and let those defenders go do their business and try to get the flag. You can't impede the defender's progress. You can't push him. You can't get in his or her way. You can't shove him. You just got to stop, and it's so hard to teach them to do that because they're wanting to help downfield, and I understand that, but it's tougher on our referees trying to watch that. So you get a few warnings about that. So make sure we're teaching them to stop downfield and let the offense score if they can. Let's talk a little bit about some penalties. 5-yard offensive penalties will include false start. These will be assessed from the original line of scrimmage. Legal blocking downfield, charging, flag guarding. Obviously, you can't put your hand down to prevent somebody from grabbing your flag. If a shirt's hanging over the flag belt, a flag guarding penalty will be called, as we talked about earlier. Make sure your shirt tails are in. Illegal forward pass interference, leaving your feet to avoid a tackle we talked about, and then delay of game there. More 5-yard penalties on the defensive side. They'll include offsides, the illegal rush we talked about, charging, which is running over somebody, leaving your feet, as we talked about, to dive for the flag. Unsportsmanlike conduct for coaches, players, and fans. Those are excessive at 15 yards. That's a 15-yard penalty, an automatic first down. That's a first offense. Second offense, 15-yard penalty, automatic first down. The coach, player, or fan being asked to leave the playing area. You don't want that to happen. Individuals ejected from the game will be contacted by Kids Incorporated the following week, probably on that Monday morning. And most of the time the coaches will contact me before that happens, or my officials have, to make sure we've got everything taken care of. So please abide by our penalties and our rules here, hopefully. Coaches, let's talk a little bit about you. You're responsible for the physical and mental well-being of each child out there. We're counting on you to take care of those kids. So it's okay to get on your kids a little bit, but when you're talking to a kid, obviously try to get on one knee, talk to them, visit with them, start with what happened, get to the meat of it, and finish on a positive end there, Coach. They're all going to make mistakes. I make mistakes. You make mistakes. It's going to happen at every game. Parents make mistakes, but we're not going to sit there and yell and chew and curse a kid out there on the field. So make sure we take care of that. Make sure maintain an adequate level of discipline on your team. Conduct, control your team's fans and our down marker individual spectators. If we've got a down marker guy from the opposing team on your side, which should never happen, but it has in the past, let's make sure we take care of the down marker guy, and we're not going to abuse him over there and yell and scream at him. He or she's just a down marker person, Coach. But what we try to do, take a home team, we just try to have that down marker person on the home team stay on their home side. I think that makes it easier for everybody. If you choose to have one offensive coach in the huddle, Coach, that's fine. Usually that's the head coach or whoever's calling the plays there. Once the huddle breaks, coach back up about 10 yards. You've got them set up. Can't say a word. Let the play run. We'll see what happens. Take the result of the play and then get back in the huddle and teach them what they did wrong, and we'll move on from there. Defensive coaches, normally we don't have a defensive coach in the huddle because they never huddle up. A defensive coach can be on that side and help get his players lined up, but once he or she has done that, we want that coach to make sure they move to one sideline or the other, because on those sides, if you'll notice on the field where we have the pylons, you'll notice they're on the inside of the numbers on the 10, the 30, the 50, the 30, and the 10. But coach, as long as you can get to the numbers, we're good with that. As long as you're out of the way of the play, we don't want somebody to run over you, either the player or the official. So just take yourself completely out of it. Make it easy on everybody there. Coaches, code of conduct, and this applies to players, this applies to officials, this applies to spectators. No profane, obscene, abusive, or degrading language in the presence of anyone attending a Kids Incorporated event. Certainly do not handle a child in an aggressive, abusive manner. Don't grab a child and push him from one position to the other because you're angry or mad he or she didn't do what you asked. There's a way to handle a kid one way or the other. Talk to him, get him from point A to point B. Make it easy on everybody, Coach. Take care of that. Any act of violence may result in the head coach or assistant coach, player, or parent being suspended indefinitely. Accept the decision of the game official on the field as being fair and call the best of their ability. I know they're not going to get every call right. I know that, Coach, and the parents know that too, and you know that. But as long as when I talk to those guys and girls about, make sure we're hustling, we're in position the best we can, and be as consistent with our calls as we can. Pretty hard to get on somebody for that. If they blew a call, they weren't where they were supposed to be, yeah, you probably may say something to them. Hey, you get positioned. You didn't see the play, something like that. But let it go. There's no need to carry that on for the next play or for the quarter or for a half or the entire game. So, if you've got questions about officials, coaches, you please call me on Monday morning. We'll go over what happened at your game. Hopefully good. If we had some bad, we'll correct that. And we're always going to do the best we can to take care of the kids, take care of everybody out there on the sidelines with our officials. Coaches, you can always question the official. Just do it in the proper manner. Do not criticize the opposing team, its players, coaches, or fans with word or gestures, coaches. Use of drugs, alcohol, tobacco in any form are not permitted while attending a Kids Incorporated game or event. Do not knowingly permit an ineligible player to play in any game. Doing so will result in forfeiting that game and the indefinite suspension from Kids Incorporated for you, coach. In other words, at the end of the day, guys, use common sense. Let's have good sportsmanship on both sidelines. As I said, I'm not worried about the wins and losses. You may be more so than I am. Maybe your parents are more so than you are. But at the end of the day, coach, make sure we've taught them how to play the game of flag football to the best of your ability and your knowledge. Have fun with them, and make sure when they leave, they've had a good time. Everybody grabs their snacks and leaves and comes back for the next game. Just make sure you take care of yourself first, coach. Take care of your kids and your parents. Do the very best you can. Without you, as I mentioned at the very first of this meeting, we can't do it without you. Certainly appreciate every coach that we have for flag football. Look forward to seeing you out there. Have fun, and we'll see you on the field, coach.